go ahead and officially kick things off now. And by way of introduction, for those I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Maria Gould. I'm the ROR project lead and happy to be here on the call today with other members of the ROR team who we will hear from in the course of the call. So thanks everyone for joining in. So today the plan for the call is to just start with a few general announcements about things that are happening with ROR, and then we'll head into some updates about various ROR work that has been underway with registry curation and technical development and all of the many things that are happening with ROR adoption and community engagement efforts. And then we're very honored and excited today to be able to feature two ROR integrations, one from Scholastica and the other from EuropePMC. So excited to go into a deep dive about that work that has been underway. And then depending on how much time we have toward the end, we'll have some open discussion and Q&A, and we always stay on the call at the very end if anybody wants to stick around and chat. So thank you all for being here, and let's go ahead and start with some announcements. So I know that we do have some first timers on the call today, so I just want to review a couple of points about why we do these calls and how you can continue to be engaged. So we have been holding these every other month since ROR was launched in 2019, and we use these calls as an opportunity to share updates and new developments about what's going on with ROR, and also raise topics for community feedback and discussion, because ROR as a community-based initiative really is invested and concerned with making sure that all of the work that is underway is driven by community needs and community insights and community feedback. So that's a really important aspect of these calls, is hearing from all of you about the questions that are coming up or the suggestions that you have about future directions. And then we also like to be able to feature different demonstrations and examples of ROR out in the wild and show real life use cases and implementations about how various types of systems and organizations are approaching their work with ROR. These calls are open to anyone, and we've been publicizing them on the new events page on the ROR website, and also circulating reminders and information to our community mailing list as well. And we've been always recording these calls, but starting this year have been posting the recordings more publicly on the ROR YouTube channel. So just to make sure that for those who are not able to join at a particular day and time are also able to stay in the loop about what's going on. So just want to also invite everyone to stay actively engaged and participating throughout the course of the call. Feel free to drop questions in chat or raise your hand and unmute, and don't be shy. So there's a lot of opportunity for informal discussion and engagement. And beyond these calls, there are other ways to get involved and stay engaged in between the bi-monthly calls. So we will drop some links and circulate them so you can have them if you don't, but we encourage you to submit feature requests and bug reports on GitHub and post questions and share information in discussion channels. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the call today. We also really welcome feedback on additions and updates to the ROR registry, and also like we're featuring these integrations on today's call, we've also been featuring integrations on the ROR blog. And so if you have been working on something that you would like to see featured in one of the case studies that Amanda is working on, please get in touch with Amanda. So these are just some of the many ways in which we encourage everyone to get involved beyond attending these calls. And the last announcement for me today is just to let you know that we are going to be presenting and participating in some upcoming events. In case you also happen to be attending any of these events, we would love to be able to meet up in person. So we'll be at the Society for Scholarly Publishing meeting next week in Portland, and also at Open Repositories next month in June, and participating virtually in the joint conference on digital libraries later in June, and then at the ISSI conference in early July. So if you are planning to be at any of those events and want to meet up, we would love to be able to say hi. So that's it from me, and I will hand it over to Adam to share some updates about registry curation.
Thanks, Maria. Can you pull up my next slide, please? So hi, everyone. No super groundbreaking news from me on the registry curation side of things. The work continues apace. Since our last release, or since our last meeting, we have published 4 releases, versions 1.22 through version 1.25. Today, we'll also be publishing our next release, version 1.26. So if you've been patiently waiting for your new record or your record changes, that should be out today. Including in what's in today's release, we've updated approximately 1,300 records and added 400 new records to the registry since we last met. As some of you may have observed, we're currently publishing releases on a bi-weekly basis to make sure our community of users has the best and most up-to-date records available. We're going to try and keep doing that, but that being said, our target for publication still remains once a month. I know, as Maria just posted, we have a lot of people traveling to different events next month, so it might go down to 1 release in June. That won't affect the total number of requests that are processed. There just might be a slight or long delay. So publishing once a month, we just do it all at the end of June versus in the middle and at the end. But keep submitting those requests. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or you want to do a bulk submission. Adam@ROR.org or registry@ROR.org.
Thank you, Adam. And we will also drop some links in the chat to make sure that everyone knows how to access the feedback form for submitting requests, and in case you haven't already seen it. So next up, we will turn it over to Liz to talk about technical work. Do you want to drive your slides, Liz?
No, I just have a couple this time, so I think we can keep them.
All right.
Can you advance to the next one? All righty. So a couple of things we've been working on the technical side recently. Big one is some infrastructure updates. So it's very exciting. Over the past couple of years, we have increased dramatically from about 1 million requests to our APIs to, well, at the time I wrote this, it was 17 million, but I just checked this morning and we are at 20 million this month, which is great. But we've also, to keep things up and running smoothly, we needed to do some planned updates, which we did do in April. So we updated our Elasticsearch software to the latest version supported by AWS, which we use. We added more resources to that search cluster and more containers for our API. So you don't need to understand all those technical terms, but the summary of all this is we have more resources serving the API so we can continue to support increased usage. Hopefully nobody noticed any issues with it. As far as I can see in our logs, everything's working smoothly, but we're monitoring that all the time to make sure that we're keeping up with the requests. Next slide, please. The other big project that we're working on and have been working on for the last several months is finally starting to implement the changes that are in the schema version 2.0 proposal. So if you have not joined these calls before, just a quick rundown. We started by circulating just some guidelines for our schema update process and kind of some promises to the community about how often and what the notice period is for making schema changes. We then circulated a draft schema version 2.0 proposal for a couple of months in December through February. We then put together a revised draft proposal, circulated it from March through April, did some in-depth review of that. We talked about it a bit the last community meeting, and we finally compiled that into the final proposal based on all the feedback that was gathered. I will pop that link into the chat. Not going to discuss the changes in that extensively here because we've talked about it a lot at our other meetings. But if you haven't seen it, the links in the chat, these are the changes that are coming up in the ROR data model and then in the ROR API, which we have just begun to work on. So next slide, please. So we've divided this work into 4 phases, and for integrators, the good news is that for this year and basically for the upcoming year, there's nothing that you need to do immediately to change anything. We're doing all of this work behind the scenes. So working on the actual schema doc and the validation code. Right now, I'll be working on the API implementation through July and August. We plan to have a beta version 2.0 of the schema available in the fall for folks to test out, but you won't see any changes in the production API at all at that point. We'll be adapting our curation tooling to allow curating records in version 2 and updating our search UI in Q4 of 2023. And then we hope to release the version 2 API and data dumps at the end of 2023 or beginning of 2024. So we'll have lots of announcements about when that's coming up. Per our schema versioning plan, we will be continuing to run the current API version side by side with version 2 for at least a year after we release version 2.0. Next slide, please. So don't panic. You will have plenty of notice and at least a year of opportunity to adjust your integrations to use version 2.0. We don't have an exact sunset date for the current version 1 schema. However, we will be determining that date once we have the 2.0 API ready to release and making lots and lots of announcements and publishing guidance through all of our various communication channels later in 2023 and 2024. So that is it for me for this time. I'll hand it back to you, Maria.
All right. Thank you, Liz, and very excited about all of these developments, and please get in touch if you have questions. So now we will turn to some adoption updates, starting with the topic of documentation and how you can get support for your ROR implementation. So I'll hand it over to you, Amanda.
Thanks. I put this in a separate section because it isn't exactly about ROR adoption, but if you could just go to the next slide, it's sort of pertinent to some of what Liz was talking about. I just wanted to mention that we do have documentation, technical documentation. Hopefully those of you who have been adopting ROR are familiar with it. And we've just been doing some reorganizing and revising and additions to it, including adding all of the fantastic feedback documents that we circulate for feedback on things like schema version 2.0 and things like that. So if you haven't, I just wanted to mention that if you haven't visited the documentation site recently, you may want to go back to it. And if you go to the next slide, Maria, you can see updated pages on forthcoming schema versions, forthcoming API versions, type ahead guidance, all kinds of things. So, and particularly, we do welcome suggestions for changes. Next slide. Yes, so there is slightly fuzzy, but up in the right-hand corner of any of our documentation pages, there is a place where you can suggest edits. So if you do see something that's unclear or that's incomplete, we would really welcome your comments on that. I just wanted to mention that. It's related to helping you do a good adoption of ROR. Now, some adoption updates. I'm going to stay on this slide for a second because I don't have any adoption news that I'm allowed to share publicly, although I've been talking to a number of people who have said some very exciting things about forthcoming ROR adoptions, and I'm just trying to convince people to let me announce them on our integration list. So I'm just going to go on from there. There is news about some exciting players adopting ROR, and when I can share that, I will. So next slide. These are charts that probably a lot of you have seen before. We've been doing some tracking of ROR in Crossref DOIs. Again, sorry for the fuzzy numbers, but Crossref first began to support ROR IDs and its metadata back in early 22. And since we've been tracking ROR IDs in Crossref metadata, that number has just recently climbed up over 50,000 DOIs with ROR IDs, which is not too bad for a single year in which that was possible. And I think you can see, so it's 51,000 and change right now. You can see a spike there, which is from August 2022, which is due to Michael, who is here and who's going to be telling us about some of the work they've been doing at EuropePMC, which did involve back in August of 2022, adding ROR IDs to a number of the grants they registered on behalf of the Wellcome Trust. So thank you for that data spike, Michael, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you momentarily. Next slide. We also track ROR IDs in DataCite. DataCite adopted support for ROR much earlier, very early, like in 2019. And so they are farther ahead in ROR adoption, but you can see that it too increases and has little spikes. So now we're over 598,000. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that if you are interested in the data behind these charts and the queries that produce them, you can now access those on the ROR website. So we've embedded them on the About page of ROR. And so if you're ever interested in looking at that data, maybe massaging some of those queries yourself, you can in fact see those. And we'll be doing more to track ROR's impact, but that's one of the main things that we've been doing. In addition, of course, to our ever-growing integrations list. So that's pretty much it from me about general adoption updates. And now we are going to turn to hearing from some of our featured integrations. And we're going to begin by hearing from Corey Shires of Scholastica. Corey?
All right. Hi. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about how we integrate ROR at Scholastica. One thing possibly to note is that we try to do as comprehensively as possible. So that was in our peer review, in our publishing, and then also including ROR in all the kind of exported metadata formats like JATs and things like that, Crossref, whatnot. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, okay, about me, I'm a co-founder and CTO at Scholastica. I mentioned we're a peer review and publishing platform, so we have products for peer review, publishing, and production. And we work with journals from all different disciplines. Next slide. I'm kind of go real fast, or I think we all kind of know this. Two things I'll point out is for us, for our use case, we had been kind of eyeing the commercial options that have existed for years. They didn't work for us primarily because of cost. And so it just weren't suitable for our business or our customers. So that was one reason we were excited to see ROR. And then kind of the right-hand side of this slide, one thing I'm excited about is now that we have integrated ROR and we're getting that richer data, we will be able to do things like group authors. So, kind of for a journal, I want to see all the authors who've submitted from a given institution. That's a example of a kind of use case that previously we would not have been able to do well. And now I think we could do that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we kind of approached it just high level as a two-part process. Of course, first you need to collect the ROR data somehow. So that probably means like updating your web forms at the very least. And then we wanted to make sure we were sharing it. So I mentioned when you publish an article, you can find that information when viewing it on the web or in a PDF. And then also making sure that any kind of exported formats, JATs or something like that, that data gets passed along to all those formats, so it's really as useful as possible. Okay, next slide. Oh yeah, and so I'm going to talk about each of these two steps, and then I have a few other things after that. But I would say overall, having talked to Amanda, I think the way we integrated it is pretty by the book, so to speak. So hopefully it won't be anything too surprising, I think, but hopefully you'll be able to, see a few things, maybe something interesting in here. Okay, so this is mostly about updating our user interface so that we could collect ROR. Next slide, please. Okay, just some key points. So this isn't really a ROR thing, I suppose, but if your UI, if your user interface does not have support for authors to have more than one affiliation, well, you're going to need to start there, really. We all know that in the real world, authors come often from more than one institutional affiliation. So you need a way to support that in the UI. Second, this is right out of the ROR docs. Use a type ahead element. That's the way to go. Also, don't restrict people to use only ROR. So that's to say, when you're typing in that type ahead, if you don't like the options that are suggested, give them the ability to just type whatever they want. Don't get too worried about the hierarchies. Just whatever the ROR API is spitting out is going to be good, I think. And finally, we kind of went back and forth a little bit with how apparent to make this in the user interface, and ultimately it's actually kind of opaque to the user. We just sort of give them a drop select and didn't really do much more than that, and I think that's worked well so far. Okay, if you go to the next slide, I think we have a screenshot maybe. So here it is in our manuscript submission form, and so one thing I'll point out is authors can add more than one affiliation. It's a little small, but you see that blue link that says add another affiliation. And also for us, we capture the affiliations as kind of a pair of data, the institution name, which is coming from ROR, and then the department, which is sort of just a freewheeling text string. They can put in sort of whatever they want there. And that's how we've done it. And this uses a type ahead. The institution field uses a type ahead UI element that's powered by the ROR API. Okay, next slide. And here it is in our article publication form. So, very similar here. Both these forms are collecting author data. So of course they're pretty similar. But in this GIF here, you can see the type ahead in action. And also, as with the manuscript form, you can add more than one author affiliation, of course. Okay, next slide. So that was how we collected the data. Pretty straightforward. Just making sure to get it in all the different forms where authors can add information. Now I'll talk a little bit about how we use that data in the application or really primarily in the export formats that we provide to our publishing customers and our production customers as well. Okay, next slide. All right, so yeah, some key points here. We want to include that ROR ID everywhere possible. I think if you're only going to do one kind of place, I think probably Crossref XML is probably the best way to go. And also, as of relatively recently, DOAJ, which is Directory of Open Access Journals, also accepts Crossref XML. So if you do Crossref, you can kind of get DOAJ for free, assuming you're setting it up there. That's good. Of course, JATS is, I think, kind of the most important, or my perception from our customers is that is the most maybe generic format that has a wide range of use cases. So important to get it in there as well. I think it's kind of an open question whether or not you want to, or for us, like, do people really care about seeing the ROR ID on the web page, article web page, or in the PDF? I think it's more, personally, I think it's more important to get it into the kind of publishing information ecosystem than it is to display it on the page. Nevertheless, certainly that's an option. And then, yeah, for this final point, and this is something we haven't really done yet, but I mentioned I'm interested to be able to kind of search authors by affiliation in our app, which is something that is now possible thanks to ROR. Okay, next slide. Okay, and these next two, I'm going to talk about just kind of the process really quickly for how we integrated it, because I think there might be some good tips there. And then after that, I'll talk a little bit about how we approach the historical migration of the historical data. Anyway, so this is kind of project management style, kind of how we rolled it out. You can go to the next slide, please. We kind of took what might seem like a sort of opposite approach. So we first built, we kind of did the share step and then the collect step. So we updated all our export formats to kind of have a slot ready to go for ROR data. And that way, and then after that, we updated the web form so that we could actually collect the data. So by doing the share step first, you're not really shipping or kind of delivering any benefit to the users because there's no data that's going to go in there if you're not collecting it. But what that let us do was we could ship those changes all the way to production, have that done, and then we can move on to the collect step as sort of a separate phase of the project. And that let us basically cut the project in half, which, if y'all have done any project management, it's nice to be able to kind of find a nice seam in a project where you can sort of split it in two. Makes it easier to handle. So that worked well for us. Little tip. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and then finally, we did, after all that, kind of say, oh, well, let's look at our historical records and try to slot in, or figure out the ROR IDs for, a decade of historical data. So, all right, you can go to the next slide. So with this, of course, you want to accurately enrich the historical data. You could do this lots of different ways. We took a pretty dead simple approach. I think whatever approach you take, we took a simple approach. There are better ways to do this probably, and other people might have more sophisticated kind of opinions on this. But our approach was we wanted it to be automated, and we wanted to favor false negatives, which is to say, we would rather miss a few linkages than have incorrect linkages. And then, first you want to beware also of disambiguation. So the University of Miami is, of course, in Miami, and then I think also in Ohio, just to give one example, but I'm sure there are many examples of that sort of thing. Okay, next slide, please. Oh yeah, and I was really surprised that we were able to link a lot of records. Not all of those records are going into Crossref because in order for that to happen, we would need to link it in our system, and that customer would need to have the Crossref integration enabled. But some of them did, I'm sure, make it to Crossref. I don't know the number, so I hope that we contributed a little bit to that chart we saw earlier. Okay, I think next slide. I think this might be the last thing. Yeah, so that's all I got. Oh yeah, and I think I mentioned this in the blog post that Amanda did, but I didn't really work on this myself in terms of hands on the keyboard or whatever, but definitely want to thank Tatum and Brian, the people on our team who really did most of the work here. And that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I was just writing this in the chat, but I'll just say it out loud. I do periodically go in and look at that Crossref data, as I say, and there are more queries in the spreadsheet than I show in those charts. And one of the things that I have been tracking and noticing is that more journal articles have ROR IDs in them now. The item types that Michael's group, EuropePMC, have been contributing are all items of type grant, which is great. We want ROR IDs everywhere. But I have noticed since the Scholastica integration, Corey, that there have been more journal articles with ROR IDs in the author affiliations. So I don't know if that's all due to Scholastica, but I'm sure that some of it is.
Good to hear.
Yeah, great. Okay, so now let's turn it over to Michael Perkin.
Thanks very much, Amanda. And thank you very much for giving me the chance to talk here. EuropePMC, actually, next slide, please. Just for people who aren't aware, my name is Michael Parkin. I work at EuropePMC, which is a life science literature database. We're based in Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And we have a wide range of literature content, mostly it's journal articles, but also things like patents and preprints. And we're very kindly supported by 37 research funders. So this integration is a little bit different. It's much more like part 4 of Corey's talk there, working with historical data rather than web form type stuff. And yes, it's grants information rather than publication. So hopefully a little bit different. One of the requirements that we place on our 37 funders is that they have to share grant data with us. So these are the grants that they provide to their, the funds they give to their researchers. And next slide, please. And they provide those to us in the form of a spreadsheet. And we've been collecting this data for something like 13, 14 years. On the left-hand side, here's a copy of what a grant record looks like in EuropePub and Central. It looks not too dissimilar from a publication in that there's sort of a title, an abstract. There's an author. In this case, we call them a principal investigator or PI. And unsurprisingly, considering we're in a ROR call here, there's an affiliation associated. So in this particular one, it's the University of Cambridge. So we have been loading that data to an internal database for the last year, over a decade, and pretty much that comes in as is. So next slide, please. So you can imagine that over that time period, pretty much every single variation of every single university, mostly in the UK, most of our funders are based here in the UK, but in this case, every single variation you could imagine of Cambridge University, University of Cambridge, things like acronyms. Popular ones here are UCL for University College London. Pretty much every single way you could imagine putting in an institution's name has been done in one of those spreadsheets at some point in time. And so we've kind of had a long-standing task to try and normalize these, try and turn all of these. Actually, you can see the top one there as a typo, University, to try and turn all of this into something a bit more sensible. What you're seeing on the left here is a drop-down autocomplete in a front-end tool that lets you search through all of this grant data. But until ROR came along, obviously there are paid solutions. EuropePMC is very much free to use. We're very reluctant to pay for commercial things. What ROR provides is a nice free-to-use identifier to sort of bolt onto these horrible variations of, in this case, University of Cambridge. So what we've been doing is taking all of this legacy data and running it through the ROR API. So we have a little very simple script written in a programming language called R, where we pass these variations, and the ROR API gives us back best guesses for which, in this case, University of Cambridge will probably be the top hit for all of these. Sometimes you'll get different results. The ROR API is very good at telling you kind of probability score, tells you how it matched that string to its database. And within this script, we sort of customize some parameters for what we will and won't accept. Unlike, as Corey mentioned, it would be great to have this automated. We actually did manual curation of the results to make sure that we're absolutely accurate, because we really didn't want to introduce incorrect data on top of what funders have provided to us. So next slide, please. So what we want to do here is turn all of these University of Cambridge variations into a single name. So what we've been doing is basically creating a local copy of the ROR data. So we go to there's an Odo link each week and fetch the latest update, if there is one from Adam. We pass out only two things actually from the data at the moment. We pass the ROR ID itself and what ROR considers the primary name, that is the preferred single title by which to call, in this case, Cambridge University. And we store that within our database. So what we've been doing is aggregating all of those strange variations to a single ROR ID, and then from a single ROR ID to the primary name. But the nice thing is, if that primary name changes, if the university would say, actually, we prefer to be called University of Cambridge, we know that that would be then entered into the ROR record, and in a newer update, we could then fetch that and dynamically replace the name in our systems, which is really nice. So when we started this, we had about 10% of grants linked to ROR IDs. We do allow funders to provide them, but very few do provide ROR IDs to us directly. We now have something like 82% coverage, which is really nice. Next slide, please. And one of the nice things about having these ROR IDs attached to these institutions in our databases. We can push it to other places. So as Amanda mentioned earlier, that little spike at the beginning in 2022 was when we added ROR IDs to the Welcome grant DOIs that we deposit on their behalf. I think something in the region of 90% of Welcome grant DOIs now have a ROR ID that was added this way. So please do follow the link and check it out yourself if you're interested. Next slide, please. Just a few things we'd like to just sort of to finish this off. As I mentioned, there was a manual step where we checked the validity of the results from the ROR API. In the interests of time and my sanity, we didn't do everything, but we would like to increase the coverage up from that sort of 80%. We have an API that lets you view this grant data. We provide the ROR ID within that API, but at the moment we don't let you search by ROR ID, which we think is an obvious step for programmatic to users to follow. And finally, that autocomplete you saw, the ordering that we have isn't the best. We think what we're looking at doing is trying to give you the most likely match. If you type in Cambridge, for example, it's not just the University of Cambridge. There are also other organizations based in Cambridge, and the ordering isn't optimal. So we're looking at improving that as well. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Michael. And I should mention too that Michael has done an interview with us for a case study about their work, and that is sort of currently going through the editing process and will be up on the ROR blog at some point quite soon. Okay, next slide.
Do we have time for a couple of questions about these demonstrations?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to ask a couple of questions, but before I do, does anybody else on the call have any questions for Michael or Corey?
I have a question. Can I step in?
Yeah, please.
About your script to do the mapping. Did you try to use OpenRefine? And if so, how does it compare with the script that you developed?
Yeah, I think a few years ago we were looking at that. I think that was being promoted as a good tool to use. I have to confess, I haven't looked at it. I suspect it's a bit more user-friendly than the script we wrote, but it is very simple. The ROR API gives a really sensible output. I did promise I would share that script on the GitLab or GitHub repository. I have not done so yet, but I will make that available. I'm afraid I don't have any experience of OpenRefine, but maybe someone else on the call does, perhaps.
We are using OpenRefine, and that's why why I was asking. The results are not. It requires a lot of manual analysis once we do. So there's an automatic bit, but then we always have to look into it. So that's why we are always looking for a better tool to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Liz can talk more about this. We actually have a dedicated OpenRefine tool for ROR. I do, and I'll put a link to the documentation about that in the chat. The way I think of it, which may or may not be correct, is that there are people, honestly, I think mostly librarians, who really, really want to look at every single match and make sure that it's really close. So OpenRefine, I think, is used quite a bit in the library world. So if that is something that you want to do, and I think it's especially good for what I think of as sort of small data sets, like even something in the hundreds, maybe that is something that you want to look at every single thing closely, as Michael said he did. And I think you said your funders are, what, I've forgotten how many there were, Michael, just
37.
There you go. So, but we do, Katja, have in the ROR API, the affiliation matching service, which does a much better job if you want something that is primarily automatic. We often, recommend, like, there should be at least a little bit of a layer of human review to check everything. But I'll let's see, the link that I shared up earlier in the chat about I'll see if I can share it again. or if someone else could, to matching organization names to ROR IDs, or even just the affiliation parameter. There's some documentation about how to do that sort of more automatically.
Yeah, with
Than
our
Open
Open
Refine.
Refine reconciler, the way that it works requires you to manually go through and tick a box to select the match. So unless it works, it's good for small data sets, as Amanda mentioned, of maybe in the hundreds, but unless you have a real abundance of time and patience, it's a bit much for larger data sets.
That's never the case, right?
Right.
And yeah, and in our case, and I believe in most cases, the number of registries to look into is much higher than the hundreds, right? So yeah, it's a challenge. It's just that it takes a long time to get anything done. And we are also trying to map affiliations in the context of grants. And we have other use cases, but that's one of the use cases we are using it, and it just takes a long time.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I can't do better than refer you to these two other places of documentation. The affiliation parameter in particular is designed to do that. It gives you you send it an affiliation, a text string, and it tells you in return, it recommends something for you. And then, that's never going to be 100% accurate, but you can, at least it can be quick, especially if you read it offline and you're like, okay, here's a bunch of chosen things. And then it's much quicker to at least review those or review the ones that didn't have a match, So yeah, there definitely are faster ways to do it than Open Refine.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions for
I have
Michael or Corey?
I have a question for Michael, actually. How long did this project take to go from 0 to 85% or whatever it was you said?
I would say about 4 or 5 months.
Oh,
But that's with just me and another colleague working on this. And it was not this was kind of a background task, to be honest. I mean, we've had dodgy affiliation data for 13 years, so it wasn't like an emergency to get this done. There was kind of a bit of a background task, I think. But what we were keen to do was to set up something that would work continually now. So this pulling in of the raw dumps on a weekly basis is a really nice thing to have. So there's probably a lot more we could do. So I don't think this project is like complete. It's just we reached a point where we kind of had something to worth demonstrating, essentially. But like I said, there's a few other things to do. But yeah, that kind of time frame. But that probably doesn't tell you very much because it wasn't wasn't full-time work on this.
I see. Thanks.
I had one quick question for Corey, kind of motivated primarily by curiosity. I just wondered if when you were talking about how you do allow other inputs, you don't restrict the inputs to ROR, and obviously that's something that is one of the recommended best practices. I just wondered if you do any sort of manual curation or intervention to check those inputs, and in case for some reason the user missed that there was a ROR and entered something that actually is in the registry, or what kind of insights you have about the non-ROR inputs that you're getting there.
I have to start by saying we don't go back and check those. It's just not feasible.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Small company, but I'm not sure how many kind of potential linkages we're missing. That said, I think that it sounds like the tooling around this is maybe getting more sophisticated. For example, I just learned from Amanda last week that there's like an endpoint that can, or someone else mentioned this on the call, that can kind of give you the probability of a match if it's not a precise match and things like that. Also, I know Amanda and I talked about kind of more formally building in knowledge of the institutions that might need to be disambiguated. Like I mentioned, University of Miami. Anyway, I guess to get more to the point, to the extent that an automated solution emerges, so if we could like run a background task, you know, whenever a manuscript gets submitted and kind of, you know, check, and if it's over a certain probability threshold, go ahead and link that or something. Anyway, we would definitely do that. That would be worth a bit, you know, the little bit of effort it would take. Of course, with the caveat that, like, you know, we want to be very careful about false positives.
Sure, of course, thanks. All right, I think we can move on now, and if any other questions come up, feel free to pop them into chat. So the last item for today is getting some input on the kinds of information you're curious to learn about or keep learning about on these calls, and other ways to stay in touch with ROR. So I'll hand it over to Amanda again to give a little more background.
Thanks. You can actually go to the next slide if you would. This is something that we, you know, to be honest, have just been thinking about, at least for the survey part, in the last couple of days. We're just trying to think about how to optimize, as it were, ROR community activities. So I'm going to share the link to this very short survey in the chat. And I'll send it out as well in email follow-ups. And of course, we will be posting the slide deck afterward. It will be in there. This is just about 12 questions on what you'd like to hear in the call, other community activities, other community places that you might find valuable as you support ROR in all of the ways, you know, just as an initiative as well as a technology, if that makes sense. We, you know, love our integrators to tell us about what's working and what's not. We love for you to give us feedback on what would be useful for you and things like the new schema and new versions of the API. But we do also love to hear strategic feedback on what we can be doing as a project, what we should be doing in terms of community spaces and activities and events and so on. So yeah, just a brief survey. You can, if we end the call early, you should have time to fill it out in the next 9 minutes before noon. You can feel free to multitask and do it as we end the call. That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. And thanks everyone for sharing your thoughts. I think one of the things that we're just, you know, trying to optimize, as Amanda said, is the community continues to grow, and that's really great and really exciting. And we just want to make sure that we're convening the right kind of spaces and platforms in the right ways and in the right, you know, at the right times, so that everyone feels like they are, you know, that they're receiving information about what's going on about ROR and knowing when the next calls are going to happen or when announcements are coming out, and also, you know, to just make sure that everyone knows where to go to ask questions. And those are the kinds of things that we're really trying to fine tune and right size as the community continues to grow along with ROR. So
it's actually analogous to what the infrastructural work that Liz was talking about earlier, scaling up to support the increased use of the API. And we need to think about ways to scale up the ROR community to increase, to accommodate increasing usage and increasing numbers of people interested in ROR.
So that concludes the formal agenda for today. I think we have time for one or two final questions. If anyone here has anything that they want to ask about, feel free. So we'll just open the floor if anyone wants to ask about anything or share about anything. Just checking to see in Zoom if anyone has a hand raised. I do want to highlight that in the introductions and chat, people shared some interesting tidbits and details about stuff that they are working on. So we may want to follow up with some of you to ask more about that or invite you to participate in sharing more at an upcoming call. So thanks everyone for sharing those updates. All right. Sounds like not hearing an overwhelming need for questions. Everyone's questions have been answered today. So I think we can bring the call to a close and just want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for your questions. Thank you especially to Michael and to Corey for sharing their work today. And please continue to keep in touch. The next call will be held in July. I believe the date is July 25th, but Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong. And we will circulate more news when the registration is up on the events page. You can register now, and we'll also send out a reminder closer to the time to prompt you all to register. So thanks again. Great to see you. We will hang out on Zoom if anybody wants to stick around and chat off the recording. And if you want to ask about anything. Great to see you all. Take care.